And if you want the recording, just let me know. Like if you have a friend who you think it'll be valuable, let me know and I'll be happy to send it out. So, wow, thank you so much, everyone. A special thanks to, let me introduce Rachel Devries. And Rachel, tell us a little about you and your new job.
Sure. So I started on Monday working for the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce as their membership engagement manager. Super excited about that. And thinking I'm renting my home right now with my boyfriend and thinking about perhaps getting a home, buying a home in the sometime future. I'm really excited to have a place that's really my own. I live in a duplex right now, and our neighbors, I would like to have our own place. So super excited to hear from Anita and Carrie and Brooke this morning. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm Anita Blender Realty. I have, been in real estate for about 25 years and pretty much every facet of real estate, buying, selling, new construction, property management, investment, but my favorite is working with new home buyers and helping them through the process. And it's all the things that your parents don't tell you. It's just to get the facts straight and current. So thank you. Carrie, our mortgage expert, please introduce.
I am Carrie Goldring. I have been in the mortgage real estate business since I was 14 years old. I've been doing this a very long time. Love working with first-time home buyers, and I also specialize in working with people going through divorce. So I got both ends of the spectrum, but the education and the teaching is the part that I enjoy the most.
And Brooke, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Bendix. I'm a psychotherapist and I own Therapyology, a group practice in West Bloomfield that focuses on mental health for the next generation. We see a lot of kids, teens, young adults, 20-somethings, and a lot of young families coming in, and we try to improve their mental health and mental well-being. And I myself, similar to Rachel, will be in the home buying industry pretty soon. And I think we all came together to help understand this next generation of home buyers and how we can take the anxiety out of home buying, because it is a very daunting task. And I myself just went through a new office build. And so the thought and idea of buying a new house and furnishing that brings up a lot of anxiety within me. And so I hope to contribute what the mental health piece looks like while going through this life process.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So during our conversation, if you have any questions, you can just throw them out or pop them in the chat room, and Rachel's going to be monitoring the chat room. But Rachel's really going to start us off.
Thank you. So let's kind of start with the basics. Anita, what are the market trends in the housing market?
Wow, what a question to start with. So it's a very interesting market right now. Essentially, you've read a lot of headlines that the inventory for homes, it is an all-time low. In a balanced market, meaning supply and demand of sellers and buyers, you typically have about 6 months worth of inventory in terms of sellers, as well as 6 months in terms of number of buyers who are looking to buy their home. In some communities, you only have a month or a month and a half of inventory. So really what it is it's a lot tougher for home buyers because there's not as much selection right now. I think that's going to change over the next number of months. as people get, and I'm going to say baby boomers who are living in a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath colonial who are looking to downsize, I think as they get more comfortable in terms of getting vaccinated and they themselves looking for a home, will open up the supply end of it. From the buyer standpoint, because interest rates are at incredible lows, they have been creeping up a bit, but you're really looking at still very low interest rates, around 3%. It gives buyers more purchasing power. And there's a whole generation of millennials who are looking to establish a home, their first home. And so you have a big population coming into the home buying scene. So it's not uncommon right now for buyers having to put in multiple offers with multiple homes before they get something. Critical that you're with a good realtor to help you through that process, so it isn't so daunting and nerve-wracking and emotional.
I want to jump real back for a second. You mentioned vaccines. How exactly has COVID-19 affected the home buying process?
Well, like any other industry, it has impacted us. In real estate, we have to follow CDC guidelines in terms of both social distancing as well as making sure that you have masks. So what that means for buyers is that when you go look at a home, you're not going to have the entire family through at one time, typically 2 people at a time, that you be prepared to wear a mask. And the realtor will typically, open the door and turn on the lights so you can tour the home. So we don't have multiple people, like 6 people touring. We typically do it 2 at a time. From the seller side, it really is the same. Sellers are not home when their homes are being toured by buyers. So regardless, you are keeping social distance, you are wearing masks. And the big thing is a lot of real estate and the documentation is done electronically. So really a lot of it between Zoom meetings and Authenticsign, you don't even need to have a lot of face-to-face.
That's great. It's 11 minutes in, it's already clear, Anita, that you're very COVID safe, but you also really know your stuff and are a wonderful realtor. How do I know though if you're the right realtor for me? How do I choose the right realtor?
Great question. Really find somebody that you like, and you trust. And if you don't know anybody, then ask your friends. Interview a couple of realtors, and whoever you feel that understands your needs and can help you through the process is the right realtor for you. And I think that Brooke could probably comment a little bit about this in terms of making the right match.
Well, I'd have to agree with you on that. And I think personality comes into play too. I know a lot of different realtors, and I'd have to say that I would agree with you, Anita, that, it's a relationship. It's a relationship that you form, and it's a long one at that, because, I'd say that, it probably across the gamut of, maybe years ago, you'd be able to start the home buying process and find something really quickly, to some people have been looking for years and working with a realtor for years. So it really is that relationship and looking at the personality as well, and knowing that not only do they know what they're doing, but also can you be talking to this person, and do they get a sense of who you are and what you want and what you're looking for, like long-term life goals. And if not, then it's similar to a relationship, breaking up with that realtor, and no hard feelings, but it's time to move on and find somebody else. Very similar to in my industry as a therapist, that we have a conversation. If it's not the right fit, I will help you find somebody else who it is a right fit, or being able to move on. So I think it is just much like finding a doctor. finding a realtor is somebody who you're going to be able to talk to on a daily basis and hold your hand through this really life-changing process.
So it sounds like a realtor is really a support system as well. Couldn't I just use Zillow though? Like, I don't need the support. I'll just scroll through the app, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
You can totally use Zillow. But if anybody else is like me, and for some reason, Zillow thinks that I make $2 million, I'm getting listings for $2 million from Zillow. So they might not know what exactly that I'm looking for. So really, you're going to want to have a professional, somebody who really knows you and what your long-term life goals are, and be able to understand the market, somebody like Carrie who understands mortgages. And, you know, yes, could you go to Zillow? Sure. But just the same thing as you can go to WebMD and find out how to treat your anxiety, it's not going to be the same. You're going to want a professional, like a doctor or a therapist, and you're not going to want to handle your own divorce case. So you hire a divorce attorney. So you go to a professional.
I think the key thing is you're absolutely right. And along with finding that right realtor is finding that right lender. And it's always the first step, actually, to speak with somebody like Carrie and meet with the lender or prospective lender first to understand how much can you afford. And if you're not ready to buy a home, what are some of the financial moves you need to do in order to get in that position? So Carrie, I'm going to ask you, typically for me, I just call you up and say, hey, Carrie, you know, Amy and Ian, they want to buy a home. Can you talk to them? And you take it from there. Do you want to give us some insight in terms of your process?
Sure. So we usually start with a phone conversation that usually runs just under an hour. And I answer any questions anyone has. And then I'm really just starting with the basics and going from there. So, you know, name, address, social security number, birthday is where we start. And then we get into how are you paid and what your income is and what your monthly debt is and how much are you comfortable spending a month and how much money do you have to invest in the process. And then we kind of work backwards from there. We take a peek at what you've been looking at already or what you feel you're attracted to. And then it's like a balancing act. So if I tell you you have a certain payment and you need X number of dollars and you're like, oh, I can't pay that, then, you know, we take it. Well, how do you take that down? Do you put down? Do you go in a different price range? You need more money than you were expecting. What are different ways that you can get money for down payment? And then we have a whole slew of government guidelines that we have to follow. So I also make sure that you follow all the guidelines. And if you don't, or you're close, then, you know, we talk about where we get to go there. And then I usually give you a list of homework, either documents that you need or things that you need to find out. And then you start house hunting. And as you house hunt, we go over what's the payment on that house? How much money do you need to close? Now you find the next house. What's the payment? How much do you need to close? And eventually you kind of get the feel for it yourself. But at the beginning, we have to talk a lot. And then by the time you're ready to make an offer on a home, I usually have all your documents and know you can get a mortgage. I write a letter to go with your offer. And in today's market, we've been actually picking up the phone and calling the listing agent to sell you on why they should take your offer, as opposed to the other offers that are coming in on the home at this time. And then I work with you all through the closing table and stay in touch with you after.
I think you brought up a couple of really great points in terms of if you go through the process and come down to, okay, so where is my budget? One of the things that's unique to this market is that, let's say if somebody has a $250,000 budget, I am showing them homes around the 200,000, 225, because what's very different is you see a lot of not only full price cash offers, but people willing to pay over asking price, and it may be 10% more than asking price. So in order to make sure that we are in the right ballpark, I'm going to show you homes that may be 10 or 15% under what you really can afford, because we recognize that we'll probably have to pay over asking. And that's a really important point. The other thing is, when you start your home buying process, recognize that when you put an offer on a home, you have to put earnest money deposit with that offer, which goes into an escrow account, and it goes towards the purchase of the home. Now, traditionally, real estate market, they've asked you, we're going to put 3% of the home price into escrow. So you need to have available cash in which to do that. Now, because the market's so tight, the higher the earnest money deposit will show the seller that you are a very viable candidate, and it gives you a little bit more power and an edge in terms of making an offer. So Carrie's right. I also ask my buyers to write a letter, and a letter is to help them stand out from the crowd. So there's a few ways which we stand out from the crowd. One is introduce yourself, your circumstances, like, let's see if I can kind of call on you, recently married, want to buy our first home. It's really a very attractive and appealing letter, along with a couple of pictures for potential seller to read. And then if you put in, depending on where we're at in the market, for sure asking price, but many times you're going to go over asking, and you're going to be flexible on the terms in terms of occupancy. And then I also recommend a strong earnest money deposit. So you do have to have some cash on hand before you embark on the process.
So Anita, I had never heard that before. I would imagine that if someone is looking to sell their house, they're just going to sell it to the person who is offering them the most money. But you're saying there is kind of a personal aspect to it, that they want, someone from a nice family to move in?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of variables to it. And they want to be comfortable with the buyers because they want to have a very smooth closing. And many times the sellers will show after the transaction is coming to a close, the sellers will show the buyers around the house, here's how to change, here's the filter, here's the paint, whatever. And I think that they're looking for, they've lived in a home for a while and it's their home, and they're looking for nice people and many times young couples who are looking to raise a family in this home, depending on so those do make an impact. Sure, if there's a cash offer and it's over asking, that's always the best offer, but not always the one they choose.
Okay. And a cash offer, what is that? When I was younger, I always imagined someone coming with like 3 bags full of like cash and just dropping it. What is a cash offer exactly?
Pretty much that, except the bags of cash are actually a cashier's check. Okay. So it's a certified cashier's check. So they go to the bank and they basically get a check for, let's say $250,000. Mm-hmm. Now, Carrie can talk more about, closing costs, because there's a price of the home and then there's a price of closing costs, and she can define that. So what are closing costs, Carrie?
There's so many people that are involved in the home buying process that it's kind of amazing, actually. So you have the lender who you're borrowing the money from, that has fees for, there's actually a fraud check that he goes through now, where it's kind of like a Google search of, do you own any property that you haven't told out, or things like that. I've actually found farmland that was left to a couple that they didn't even know they had from going through the mortgage process. I found someone else whose parents left them a home that they didn't know they had. So it's kind of an interesting, doesn't happen often, but every once in a while they're like, no, I don't own that house. And I'm like, oh, I think you do. And then by the time we really dig in, yeah, they were left a home that they didn't know about. So we do that check. We do what's called an appraisal, which is a value of the home from the bank perspective. We do a credit report. We have to file papers at the county, so there's a fee for that. We do something called a title search, where you hire a title company, which basically searches the home. Is the seller selling the house really the person who owns the home? Do they have contractors that they haven't paid? Do they have a mortgage? They have unpaid taxes? So we do a whole search on that, and that costs some money. We do a flood check. Is the house in a flood zone that requires flood insurance? So there's all these things that we do ahead of time that you wouldn't even think about. If you were purchasing a condo, we really look into the condo association. Do they have the right insurance that they need? Do the people pay homeowners and association dues? What if somebody fell off a roof? Do you have insurance to cover that? What if there was a car accident on your roads, which are private roads? Is there insurance that covers that? So the condos, we even dig deeper than we do on a house. But we're looking at all that kind of stuff. So typically, if I was going to give like just a basic number, I'd say somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 is what you're spending on closing costs to do all that. And then most people put money aside for taxes and insurance. So and in Michigan, we pay taxes and insurance a year ahead of time. So property taxes right now on homes, there's a summer tax that is already paid through June 30th. And there's a winter tax that's already paid through November 30th. And then you need home insurance on your home. So you're going to pay a year's worth of homeowners insurance at your closing table. You're going to reimburse the seller for taxes that they've already paid for from the time of closing, which is when you get ownership of the home through now, when you close. And then you're also going to put money aside, so when taxes are due in the future, you're going to have enough money to pay them. You're going to add to it with your mortgage payment, because they'll be included in your mortgage payment, but you have to start with a basis, because you're not going to make 12 mortgage payments before the taxes become due. So if you figure $3,000 a year of homeowners insurance, a year of property taxes, and then just stick another $500 on there just because you have interest to pay and all these other things, that's about how much closing costs are. So it's really important to go through the process, and depending on your price range, those fees do change a little bit.
Thank you, Carrie. I definitely have a lot of questions for you, but before that, I'm not sure if everyone else is feeling this way, but this is overwhelming. Brooke, what can we do to kind of relax as we not only go through this process eventually, but also just hearing all this information and like taking notes on it? How do we calm down?
Well, I agree. I empathize with you, Rachel. I mean, hearing Carrie talk and Anita, of course, too, it's overwhelming. And, you know, what comes to my mind is that as I'm listening to both of you talk is, you know, I see out there right now in our society with home buying industry is, you know, these videos out in social media about how buyers are going, you know, 20,000 up to 50,000 over asking price. And that brings up my anxiety right there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everything that Anita and Carrie both talking about, you know, it almost makes you kind of want to crawl into a hole and say like, you know what, no, I'm okay. Like, I'll just rent.
I'll buy a pen.
Right. But I think the more that you know, the more you're educated, the more that you have somebody like a trusting realtor like Anita and somebody like Carrie, they can really hold your hand and get you through the process. And, you know, everything that I do in the mental health world is who's your support system? You know, do you have family members? Do you have friends who you can talk to and potentially cry to too? Because, you know, this is a very daunting process. And I think as long as you do have professionals that you can trust that know you're a first-time home buyer, and you can rely on the support of some family members or some friends, and or even seek out, mental health professionals too, and going through that process as well, because sometimes your friends don't understand, or maybe you're, in your early 20s ready to buy a house and none of your friends are at that point, so they don't get it, or your family doesn't support you for whatever reason it is. I think when you do have that social and emotional support, it makes the process a lot easier. But you can also seek out outside support too, because it is a very long, emotional process too. I mean, there's everything we're talking about is a much more financial and strategic. But as Anita, just said, when it comes to sellers, they're looking for somebody who they want to buy their house and move into their house, not just anybody. So, a lot of this really, and I've seen many friends and family members go through this process, whether it be building a new construction or buying something that has been around for 50 plus years, that it takes an emotional toll on you. And so I think when you do have that support, friends and families or an outside professional, I think that's the most important thing. And being able to kind of take a little bit of time for yourself and kind of enjoy the process. It's, I'm sure Carrie and Anita probably can both say the same thing, that they have clients that, their hair starts falling out from the stress, but at the same time, it's also fun and exciting, and going to see all these different homes and being like, you're on House Hunters, and, like imagining that. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Brooke. I think you're absolutely right that it's stressful, but the thing that really can relax you, two things. One is remember it's fun. And the second is remember there are professionals like Anita, Carrie, and yourself who can help us with that and make it a lot easier. I want to remind everyone, if you have any specific questions, feel free to type them in the chat. I did see someone ask for the contact information of our presenters, and we for sure will put that in the chat by the end. Carrie, to start a little kind of more back in the beginning, step one, what papers will I need before I meet with you or within our first meetings?
Nothing. We're just going to talk.
Okay.
We're literally just going to talk. And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. Then that becomes part of your to-do list. So I know a lot of people think they need to have pay stubs and bank statements and all that stuff with them. I want you to have nothing, because I want to really just concentrate on your comfort zone and what you need and what your questions are. And if you're in a position to go buy a house the day after we talk, I'll set up a secure website for you. And that's when I'll ask you for pay stubs and W-2s and your driver's license, and you'll upload everything. And I'll just check them against what you told me. Believe it or not, no one knows perfect how much money they make. You would be surprised, but the pay stubs I see and the amount of money someone tells me they earn are never penny perfect. So it's better that we just talk, and then we verify everything that I need verified after the fact.
Okay. And once we do talk, when you give us that checklist, what are the things that are on there? So a bank statement.
It depends on you, and it depends on what your needs are. So the basic, if you're not a self-employed person, would be your last 2 paycheck stubs, your most recent W-2, a bank statement, and I need photo ID from everyone. Those are like the basics. Then if you have self-employment, then we have to get into what do you need to be self-employed. If you're divorced or, paying spousal support or child support, then we get into that. If you're getting a gift from a family member, then there's things that you need for that. If you've moved money around from one account to another, the government makes us track all that. So the list does get longer. And then I like to put like little cheat sheets in there too, in terms of who do you call for homeowners insurance. If you're going to do an FHA loan, what kind of things do you need to look for in the house? So I give like all these little reading materials on this website that if you want to download and read, you can.
Thank you. Anita, what about you? Do you need paperwork from us?
No, it's really more of a conversation. I just want to touch upon something that Brooke said regarding the stress or anxiety of the process. You know, one of the things that I always do when I sit down with first-time home buyers, or actually any sellers or buyers, is besides I ask a lot of questions to really understand not just what they're looking for, but really about them. And as Brooke had said, it's part of a life plan. And the more I understand what your plan is and more I understand your expectations, then the better the outcome. So I always have what I call an expectation conversation, which is finding out what they expect or understand what the process is going to be. And as a professional, this is what I've seen in the marketplace. And it's finding out from them, what do they expect of me as a realtor and what I can expect of them. So we kind of lay it all out and do a reality check. Because I think that if you do that reality check, that the outcome and the process is just going to be more enjoyable and smoother if you have that conversation early on. But Rachel, I do want to kind of go back. You know, Carrie did a fabulous job outlining. I said, what's the first step? Call a lender, find out, you know, what you qualify for. But I'd like to outline, and I have a quick couple of slides, the home buying process to give you a frame of reference. So you can see it from A to Z. I'm going to do a quick share screen.
Great.
Oh, yep, bear with me. Okay, so from Zillow fantasy to home buying reality. So Rachel, yes, feel free to kind of scroll through Zillow and see what you like. But when it comes down to buying a home, Zillow is just another resource. It's not the ultimate resource. So the process is pretty straightforward. You're going to find a realtor and you're going to get pre-approved with a lender. That's typically the first couple of steps. We talked a little bit about how much money you need to have available in order to start the home search process, recognizing that once you find a home you want to make an offer on, you'll have to put minimum of 3% earnest money into an escrow account. Then you really go through with your realtor, or even before, identify the communities that you want to live in, the location. And then I always have my buyers make two lists. One is the must-haves, like this is a must-have, for example, a 2-car attached garage. And the other list is the I wants, the things that are important but not necessarily critical to making a deal. So you're going to do some house hunting with your realtor. Once you identify a home that you love, you're going to put in an offer. And that's where you're going to have to identify the terms, meaning, you know, will you allow the seller occupancy? Can they still live in the house until you close on it, even after they sign a contract? So there's a lot of small, I'll say mini negotiations in presenting an offer. The other thing that you're going to do is you're going to get the property inspected within 7 days of making that offer, and that offer is accepted by the seller. So once they accept it, you've got 7 days to do an inspection. Personally, I believe that you should always have that inspection and not waive it, because that tells you, you know, how sound the structure is. And that's critical information. If you're going to buy something, you need to know, is the roof in good shape or is it going to need to be replaced? So getting that inspection is always critical. And lastly, the pre-closing. This is where Carrie would really help you through this process, where you want to get, you want to obtain insurance, home buyer insurance. You also want to get, and Carrie can go into a deeper detail, you want to get your loan through underwriting and the home appraised before that you even have a clear to close. So that's where you're really working not only with your realtor, but with your lender to get you to the close. And then at the close, the title for the house is going to pass from the seller to the buyer. And also at the close, the keys and the garage door opener will pass as well. So that's where you will be at the close, is where you are now going to become, meaning the first time home buyer is going to become the homeowner. So any questions on any of that? And I'm happy to share those slides and send it to you so you can take a look at it at your leisure. But it just basically outlines step by step.
I want to clarify one thing that I heard. The earnest money check, which is part of your down payment, so it's not additional money. You don't have to come up with that money until you do make an offer on a home. So you don't need it to start house hunting. You just, when you go through the actual paperwork, which is, you know, making an offer on a home, which is done in writing, and you submit that offer with money at the time. And that money, if your offer doesn't get accepted, it comes back to you, so you don't lose it. And if it does get accepted, then it's part of your down payment.
Right.
And how much does an inspection usually cost?
Usually, and Carrie, I'm trying to, you know, because the home buyer does pay for it, I'm thinking like $275
And
on
I'm
up.
thinking $350.
$350. Okay, yeah, about $350. And I could furnish a list of inspectors for you to choose from. And to Carrie's point with regard to the earnest money deposit, you're right. You don't need it until you make an offer on a home. But because it's such a dynamic market, I always say, if you're going to go out and look, be prepared, because you might see a home that you love, and it just went on the market, and get there quickly, you know, be the first one in. You want to make sure you can submit a viable offer, meaning it's in writing, you have the earnest money deposit, you have your wonderful letter, I call it the pick me letter. You have your lender provide you with the pre-approval. So when somebody sees that, they say, yes, this is a solid buyer, and this is a real candidate for this home. You know, if you don't submit all of those things, the seller is saying, well, I'll go take a look at any of those other buyers because they're more ready. So that's why I say, just to make sure that you recognize when you start looking that if you find something, you're going to need that earnest money deposit. And Carrie's right, it does go into an escrow account. It goes towards your purchase price if your offer is accepted. And if not, it is returned to you. So there's no risk there.
So when I'm in the home buying process, you know, I'm working with my realtor, my therapist, my mortgage expert. What is the relationship between like Anita and Carrie, if you're working with the same client, are the three of you communicating together? Do you go to just one person? Do you update the other? Do you guys work together, or how does that work?
So a lot of times you're working with the realtor first and working with a mortgage person on the money side. So I don't share any personal information with the realtor, so it's up to you to communicate that way. But if you tell me you're going to make an offer on a home and you're going to offer a certain sales price, I write a letter saying that you qualify at that specific sale price, and I'll, you know, write 20 letters if I need to write 20 letters. So we communicate in terms of terms. They're going to do a conventional mortgage. They're going to put this % down. They need the seller to help them with some closing costs. They're not going to be ready to make an offer because maybe you're saving some money still. So we have those kind of conversations. They're very brief and simple. And during the mortgage process, we update the realtor once a week. They made mortgage application. We're waiting for someone to review the file to see if they need additional paperwork. It's now going into underwriting. We should have an answer in 3 days. Look, we got mortgage approval. We need a couple things before we're ready to close. So the updates that I give the realtor are very, very simplistic, but they are getting updated.
It's more about the process, where you're at in the process.
Right.
Remembering that it typically takes probably right now 45 days between the time you have an accepted offer to the time you close on a house, because there are so many documents that need to be completed and reviewed. So you're looking at least a 45-day window, sometimes 30, but I think in this market it's more 45 days.
And keep in mind, it's not just your paperwork, it's paperwork on the house, it's the insurance, it's the tax, it's, you know, verifying association information. So it's not just you getting approved, but the house has to get approved. If there's an association, they need to go through an approval process.
Okay. If anyone on right now wants to ask any kind of more personal questions and you don't want everyone to see, you can also direct message me and I can read your question aloud. But Anita, I wonder, I hear from a lot of people who are in the home buying process that the seller says, you know, we have a lot of offers on this house. Like you got to buy now. It's either now or never. We have a lot of great offers. Is that just a tactic to get me to pull the trigger, or is that a real thing?
It can be a combination or either or. One of the things that I do is prior to submitting an offer, I always call the realtor to get as much information in terms of what the seller's looking for, because I want to understand what the seller's looking for so I can help guide the buyer and let them know. So it's difficult, and the reason why is that this is really one of the biggest financial decisions of your life, and nobody wants to make it in 10 minutes. But because the inventory of available homes is so low and the demand is so high, you really do need to jump at it. So I always do, and maybe Brooke can go more into this, it's kind of a gut check. I think that when you go in the home, you're looking for certain things, you have a criteria, but also you have a feel about that home. And so if you feel that you love this home, then I would say, let's write an offer. And maybe Brooke, you can talk a little bit more about, you know, how do you know when you're ready, or how do you know if this is the house? I don't like to rush anyone because it's a big decision, but before we even go out looking, we have a really clear idea what we're looking for. So when we see it, we can move forward.
Well, I would have to say that, you know, many, I'd say young first-time home buyers have given a lot of thought to it, feel as though they're ready, but are still very anxious about the process. And as I said, when you have support, when you have a good realtor that you're working with, you're educated, the anxiety starts to dissipate. I think sometimes when you see, and this is speaking from personal experience, is that I've, you know, worked with some individuals who have different personality types or sometimes mental health issues, in which we see extreme overspending and looking at houses potentially that they cannot afford. And that's not the demographic that we're necessarily talking about right here. But I think that also when we talk about Zillow fantasy, and I mentioned that I'm not buying a $2 million house right now. That's just not in my cards. But, we can fantasize about that. But the reality is that, working with somebody like Anita and Carrie to kind of, check you as to like, this is where you should be in this range. And it's, we're talking about a house, but we're also talking about a generation who potentially is putting money aside for having children and saving for college and also furnishing a house too, which is expensive. And, that's one piece of a puzzle. And, going into that, I had a question for Carrie about, I've heard of people who have made large purchases in pre-closing, and that has affected the sale of the house or the closing. And I was just curious about that. What do you tell home buyers when it comes to like right before closing, to how to spend money and how not to spend money?
So what I tell everyone, and I follow it up in writing, is do not open any new credit while you're going through the home buying process, and to keep your spending relatively the same, because we're looking at money coming in the door, income, and we're looking at money going out the door, your debt. So if all of a sudden you purchase a car, or you lease a car, or you get this Memorial Day sale of 0 interest credit to buy washer and dryer or furniture, that even though it's 0 interest, you still have a monthly payment. So now your, what we call your debt to income ratio goes up, and that can affect what you qualify to purchase. So you have to be very, very careful about those things. And what I noticed too is a lot of someone's normal, like common sense, does not fit into our business, which makes it a little difficult also. So you'll have someone say, oh, well, I have really great credit, so I can buy a house, or I just got a big commission check, so that looks good, or I'm going to pay off my lease. And all those things that you think in your head make sense. Our industry doesn't follow the same common sense. So you really have to have these conversations, because I had one person I talked to on the phone and they said, oh, well, I have this. And I'm like, that's a problem because of this. Oh, I have this, and that doesn't work because of this. And it's kind of a letdown, but our common sense is not the same as what a normal person's common sense is.
Well, we're glad we have you to tell us the real common sense. As I ask my next question to Anita, Carrie, and Brooke, if you'll put your contact information in the chat, we have 9 minutes left, and then Anita, you as well. But thinking about, Brooke mentioned our life kind of as a puzzle piece. Anita, you said you need to know our life plan to really help us find the right house for us. How many homes do people usually buy in their life?
Wow. So it's interesting. It used to be that people used to stay in their home, believe it or not, 5 to 7 years, but it's changed. People are now staying in their home a lot longer, at least 10 years. And, I see many people who've been in their home for 30 years. Part of it is it's their home, and they've perhaps made upgrades or renovations. And so there's really no reason to move. But interestingly enough, this afternoon, I'm meeting with, I'll call them move up buyers. This is a couple, they were first time home buyers in 2016. So now this is 2021, and they have a baby, and they're ready to find a bigger house. So helping them with the move up. So I think that what I'm saying, you still have your starter house, and then you have sort of a move up house as your family grows. And you might be in their home for anywhere from 10 to 30 years. And then you get to a point where, okay, I don't need this much house, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath colonial. I really just need, a 3-bedroom condo. And then they move to a smaller house. So it depends. Personally, I've been married 31 years, and this is our 4th house. So we started off with a starter house. We had the house of my dreams that I was going to be in for 30 years. That was a new construction. We were there about 5 or 7 years, moved into a family house. And in the past couple of years, we actually, I don't even want to call it downsized, but right-sized into a condo. So this is our 4th house. I think I'm probably fairly normal. I don't know, Carrie, how many houses have you lived in?
I had my starter home, then we started having babies, and then we built the home too. And then you live in, your fantasy house. And then when the kids started going off to college, I downsized to the home that I'm in now. So everyone still has a bedroom, but it's definitely.
Yeah.
I love that term, Anita, that you used of right sizing, instead of downside, right sizing. I think that's really awesome. Anita, as you put your contact information in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to do it right now.
Brooke, I want to ask, there's a lot of changes in life, and especially now with COVID, like who knows what's going to happen with anything. And when you meet with a realtor, they want to know your life plan. How can I talk to me about being transient, and how do I, figure out, plan what I want to do for my life without being like, this is exactly what I want. And if it doesn't go this way, that's it.
I think that my generation, your generation of millennials, or, the 20, 30 somethings, that we have been, I think, kind of trained to kind of move around quite a bit. And I was just actually watching something, there was a video about what the trends are in terms of jumping from company to company. And, from a workforce perspective, generations before us, the boomer generation and above, would get a job and typically stay there for 20 plus years. And we're seeing that a little bit differently now, that even younger, going out into the workforce, that people are staying at jobs far less, on average of like 3 to 5 years, if not less than that, and moving on. And the same can go to moving cities. And so I think a lot of times what you have to look at is a 10-year plan or 20-year plan. And where is it that you want to feel stable? And I think a lot of millennials and the next generation of Gen Z is that, stability is something that they crave, and stability in buying a home, I'm not going to say it's permanent, because as we just heard from Carrie and Anita, that, they've had 4 different homes that they've purchased in their lifetime. But it provides more stability. So in a generation where we are very transient and we are moving from organization or job to job within a matter of 3 to 5 years, that a home really is what it is. It's a home. It's a place that provides that stability and trust. And in a very chaotic world right now that we are living in, with this pandemic over the last year, the idea of having a home that is more stable can provide a lot of security and trust emotionally too.
Thank you, Brooke. We have about 3 more minutes here. I'm wondering, each of you, do you have any last few things that, we definitely should know about the home buying process? Brooke, I'll go back to you. Any last words?
Starting back with me. I would have to say, because I'm also, as I speak, as one of the co-hosts, but also in a boat similar to you, Rachel, where I am a millennial, and I've worked my tushy off over the last 10 years to build a business, and, want and dream of owning that, right-sized home or dream house that Anita describes and talks about as well. But I see it, as from the mental and emotional side too, and know that it is an emotional undertaking. And I think, I adore Anita, and trust her as a friend and a professional. And Carrie, I'm just getting to know you now, but these are people that you want in your back pocket so that you can call up and say, look, I'm starting this process. I need your help and support. What do I do? So, from that perspective, and everything that we've gone through in the last year with mental health, that the more people that you have that you can trust going down this road, the better off you will be.
Thank you, Brooke. Carrie, any last words?
I would just say, instead of maybe being overwhelmed at the whole process, realize that it does get down into little bits, and you do step 1 and then you get to step 2, and we're with you the whole way. And sometimes we're going to talk about how you're feeling, and sometimes we're going to talk about what's needed paperwork wise, but it is overwhelming, but you have people to guide you through the whole process, so you're not alone and you don't do everything at once.
Thank you. And Anita.
First of all, Rachel, thank you so much for being our moderator. You did a great job. Like with everybody else, it's got to be right for you. You have to feel a level of comfort with this, and it is a process. And like both Carrie and Brooke have said, it can seem overwhelming, but if you have the support to go through the process, somebody who's going to hold your hand and explain things, making sure that you're okay every step of the way. I always tell, whether buyers or sellers, I always tell them, look, I haven't lost anyone yet, and I don't plan on losing you. So it is exciting, and you should just enjoy the journey, the next step in the journey, and feel comfortable with it. And you'll know when it's right for you when you see that home and saying, wow, I could see myself living here. But it's a big step. I get that. I remember the first one. It's a big step.
Well, I think we all feel much more comfortable now. I'll speak for myself. Thank you, Anita, Carrie, Brooke. So appreciate it. We know we can reach out to you whenever we need help with anything. And thank you so much to our viewers, whether you're watching it now live or later recorded. So happy to have learned so much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.